Welcome to Building the Future. I'm your host, Kevin Horick. You can check out the radio version of the show every Tuesdays and Thursdays at 2 p.m. Eastern on WDJY 99.1 in Atlanta. We also air on a podcasting network in Los Angeles called the 405 Media. There's a TV version of the show that airs on KMVT 15 in Silicon Valley at 8 p.m. Pacific on Tuesday nights. Both versions of the show air in other states. For these show times, plus past episodes, please visit the show's website at buildingthefutureshow.com. The music for the show is done by Electric Mantra. You can check him out at electricmantra.com. Join me at the 10th Annual Media Excellence Awards on January 18th in Beverly Hills, California. The attendees and I will be celebrating innovation and leadership in technology and entertainment. There are 20 award categories with 1,000 nominees. These awards honor those who are creating groundbreaking technology to better our lives and celebrate the hard work, determination, and brilliance in the leadership within the companies which create the new world we live in today. I will be recording nominees and winners at the awards. For tickets and more information, go to MediaXAwards.com. Welcome back to the show. Today we have Daniel Tibbets. He's the president and general manager of the El Rey Network. Daniel, welcome to the show.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, I'm excited to have you on the show. I think what you're currently doing and what you've done in the past is actually really kind of fascinating to me and I'm sure the listener. But maybe before we kind of get into all of that, maybe let's get to know you a little bit better and start off with where you grew up.
Well, it's two parts to that. I was born in Middletown, Connecticut, but my family moved to Arizona when I was 11, so that my brother and I could just have a very different life, go to college, and just explore new opportunities. So I went to high school in Mesa, Arizona, and then ended up at Arizona State University, where I got a Bachelor of Science degree in marketing.
Okay. What made you want to go into marketing, just out of curiosity?
Well, the truth is, I had attended about 2.5 years of community college, and it was a path I was interested in, but it was also the quickest path to get out of college in 4.5 years. That's the truth.
Oh, no, that's good. I love when people are just honest about why they did what they did, especially in university, right? Or post-secondary. So I think that's really great. So you get out of school. Walk me through kind of your career and your career highlights up until your current position at the El Rey Network.
Well, I'll try to give you the short version of that. But
Sure.
Out of college, I really had no clear direction. I had no desire or really knowledge for what I was going to do with the marketing degree, and ended up doing a lot of jobs.
Okay.
But I always had this love for television. Matter of fact, the first thing I ever bought with my own money, mowing lawns and washing cars for an entire summer when I was 12, was a TV.
Really?
And it was
That's
because
cool.
It's that traditional television story. I loved television. And I think my parents were very concerned what would their son do in his life, because he mainly watched television. And I was fortunate enough that almost a year out of school, I one day had an amazing epiphany, just a very clear vision of what I wanted to do in my life, and that was to be a producer.
Okay.
And it was a vision as clear as day, and I was on my way to the job I had at that time, which was kind of telemarketing in a way. And I went directly to my boss at that time. I sat down in front of him and I said, I quit. And he sat back and he looked at me and he shook his head and he said, what are you going to do? And I said, I'm going to become a TV producer. And he just goes, good luck with that. I'm in Arizona. I have no contacts, no understanding of what that meant, but I was determined that that was my future. Within 2 months, I was back at ASU in a master's program for communications, and I had obtained an internship with KPNX Channel 12. And it was an unpaid internship.
How did you land
and
that, just
every
out of
day,
curiosity?
Again, the true story, because I had quit my job, I started waiting tables.
Okay.
One of the waitresses I worked with was dating a TV sports producer from KPNX.
Okay.
And I was telling everybody at that time I was going to be a producer. So she said, you need to meet this guy. His name is Carl Helm.
Wow.
And one night after work, we went out for drinks, and I told him my vision, what I wanted to be and what I was going to do. And he gave me a phone number for someone who was looking for an intern. And I called that gentleman, and he already filled the spot, so he gave me another name. And I called that woman, Kathy Downing, and in promotions, and she had an internship in the fall. And I said, great, I'll take it. A few weeks later, she called me and said that her intern for the summer had gotten sick and wasn't going to be able to be the intern, and was I interested? Wow. And so in May of that year, this was 1993, I said absolutely, and I went in and I took that internship, and I was actually there for 4 months. I had stopped waiting tables. I was living off of the little savings I had because I showed up every day at 7 a.m. I actually got a key to the offices and would open them up in the promotions department, and I would be there every day, and I would close it every night. And I just learned everything possible, from editing to producing to writing, you name it. I would hold a light for the news producers. If they were out on a shoot at 10 o'clock and they needed somebody to hold a light, I was out there at 10 o'clock holding that light. And I was soaking up everything I could for 4 months.
Very cool. No, that's great. Okay, so sorry, I interrupted you. So you were back at school. Keep going with that story.
So I ended up actually not finishing the master's program. I actually, within, really those 4 months or 5 months that I was in the program, I ended up dropping out because at the end of the internship, finally somebody realized that this kid had been an intern a little bit longer than normal. Okay. 4 months was a month longer than the other interns. I didn't leave. Pretty much was the story. But they realized that I had some skills. And so at that time, a local producer named Rob Dalton, who owned a company called Pinnacle Communications, partnered with KPNX to produce a show. It was a one-time special called Streetwise. Okay. And the people I worked for at the station said to Rob Dalton, you got to hire this kid and put him on the show. So I became the co-writer and producer of Streetwise, and Rob paid me, $200 a week. So I was finally making some money as a producer. And for the next probably 3 months, we produced that special. It aired, and it won 2 local Emmys, wow. 2 Rocky Mountain Emmys. And suddenly, I was pretty much cemented within the local community as a writer and producer of television. And then I got hired by KSAZ, which was I think it was the CBS affiliate at the time. I believe it's Fox now, okay. To write news topicals. And then I was hired, again by Pinnacle Communications, to be a coordinator on a BBC miniseries here in Los Angeles. And so I didn't move here, but I lived on a friend's couch for 4 months. That's amazing. And we finished the BBC miniseries, and then I got hired to work on a 13-part cable series for MGM Perrin at the time. It was a syndication company. And then I also ended up getting hired to work on a special for KCBS called Buzz TV as a producer-writer. And so in that summer, I was able to work on a lot of different projects, went back to Arizona, kept doing local things. And then at the end of that year, I got the most amazing call, same individual, Rob Dalton, who had secured a position with a new syndication company called Maxim Entertainment, started by a gentleman named Ed Wilson, who came out of Columbia TriStar, here in L.A. And Rob said, how would you like to move to Los Angeles and work for Ed Wilson? And within a second, it was yes. Loaded up everything I had, ended up in L.A. So my career here in L.A. started in 1995, working for a small syndication company called Maxim. And we had shows. We were working with Dan Aykroyd on a syndicated 1 hour called Sci Factor, Chronicles of the Paranormal. Yeah. We worked with Walter Cronkite on a series that he had, and we had a whole bunch of Hallmark films to sell. to sell. And this was a situation where we did everything. I was the guy who was overseeing The Extremists with Gabrielle Reese and then with Lars Hamilton when we were doing that show. I had a third of the Western sales territory, Montana, Butte, Billings, Beaumont. We were doing everything, but it was a great, phenomenal time. The company sold to CBS in '96, became CBS Enterprises, and what a jump. All of a sudden, we had 7 divisions of CBS, syndication, international, home and video distribution. All those different groups fell under this new merger of Westinghouse, CBS, and Maxim Entertainment. And I became the manager of programming and development, overseeing shows like Pensacola Wings of Gold with James Brolin, another scripted series, working with Martha Stewart, Bob Vila, one of the first syndicated, maybe broadcast shows about the internet called the Wild Wild Web, which we launched in probably '96.
Sure.
So, early internet, because I was the young guy who had a lot of technical know-how. I knew how to turn on the computer, basically. No one else did. So
that's all you
why
needed
I
to
was
do
the
at
guy
that
who
time,
got to work on.
That's great.
Pretty much. So anyway, the short of it is where my love fell after working on all those shows was scripted. I really loved scripted programming, and an opportunity opened up to work with 2 very notable producers, Bob Papazian and Jim Hirsch.
Okay.
These guys were TV legends. Bob Papazian was the producer of The Day After, right? One of those iconic TV movies.
Totally, yeah.
Bob and Jim at the time were working. They were show running Nash Bridges. And so they hired me as their vice president of development. And phenomenal time to work on TV movies, network pilots, acquire rights from a lot of different amazing authors. Again, just a really phenomenal opportunity to learn about scripted, production, the unions, how SAG, WGA, DGA work, all from true legends. And the big project that I developed and sold there was the HBO series Rome. And, and it's one of those great stories where myself and a gentleman named Bill McDonald were having breakfast one morning. And I know I'm getting too into the weeds, but it was a general conversation. And in that conversation, we were talking about society as a whole and how man hadn't evolved really in 2,000 years, how the things we were plagued by today of religion, war, politics, things that were driving us, that were outside of our control, and how they affected family were still relevant from 2,000 years ago in the Roman time. And then we started talking about, there's this movie being produced, Gladiator. And what if we could do I, Claudius meets Gladiator and bring it together from the perspective of these, 2 common men. And we went to, literally, it was we could sell that. Sure, I know somebody at HBO. Great, I'll give Ann a call. We were in front of Ann Thermopolis a week later, pitched it. Ann said, great, we're going to do it. And if you can get John Milius, we're green lighting this. Bill and I got in the car, drove to Warner Brothers. Bill had a relationship with John, and we said, hey, John, how would you like to do a series with HBO on Rome? John was like, great.
That's amazing.
And then he spent 3 hours just telling us everything he knew about Rome. The man is an encyclopedia. It was actually, real wonderful experience in my life. Now, that all sounds great. The reality of the entertainment industry is then you got to make a deal with everyone. Then you got to make a deal with HBO. Then you got to go ahead and get everything creatively built, hire the showrunner, go through the script process, the financing process. And 5 years later, almost 6 years later, Rome became a reality when it premiered on HBO. Wow. I, however, went through that development process, but I ended up getting an opportunity to go to a company called Fireworks Entertainment, which was a CanWest global company run by a gentleman named Jay Firestone at the time. They were doing La Femme Nikita, Relic Hunter, Andromeda, a bunch of shows like that, and I had the opportunity to be a part of their LA development group. And the value of that is what I learned on Rome is the value of international financing. A part of the money for Rome came from HBO, but there was a cap. The rest of it came from the BBC.
Oh, wow.
And so understanding how financing worked internationally was my next goal. So I went from I want to be in TV to I want to be in scripted to I really want to know how the money works. And so when I went to CanWest Global, I had that opportunity to work with a gentleman named Greg Phillips in the international marketplace and really understand how these things get financed. After doing that for a few years, my focus shift again to the idea of an incubator, the idea of what you could do with a lot of interesting creative people in a single kind of collective. And this came from the idea of what was going on in the web at the time with different companies where, people would come together and just create a lot of different things. Obviously, there was a dot-com bust to that, but the idea was very sound. I was fortunate that at that time, Fox decided to bring back the really prestigious Fox Lab. And the Fox Lab was an entity that Peter Cherning created because back when they created Fox, no one took Fox seriously, right? It was the fourth stop along the road. And so they they hired Stephen Chow, Brian Graydon, and they were creating shows inside. Cops, America's Most Wanted,
Sure.
those types, even South Park, technically came out of the Fox Lab.
Interesting.
But they shut it down in '96 when they bought the station group. They bought the Chris Kraft station group in, I think, 2001. So in 2002, they said, wow, we need a lot of programming. Let's bring back that lab. And I was asked to do it.
Wow.
So I immediately jumped at that to run production for 20th Television and oversee the creative of the Fox Lab was too good of an opportunity. So I did that for about 3 years. And in that time period on the production side, I mean, I have this plaque in my office. We produced 1,000 episodes of TV in 2003 and then did it again in 2004. That's a lot of shows.
Yeah. Wow.
And in the Fox Lab, we developed the first broadcast convergence show with Classmates.com and creating a show called Classmates. And that was the first one. I think I was on CNN for that, where they interviewed me because it was really the first time that had happened where the internet became a broadcast TV show in that way. But the thing that I was most excited about at that time was, and this is where I'll get into a little bit of the weeds of mobile,
Sure.
is I had gotten a Nokia 6600 from the UK from a friend. And at that time, that was a phone that should not have been in the U.S. or worked in the U.S. But I had some friends at AT&T, and we got it to work, and I started putting video on it. And I started showing it around. And two of the corporate dev group individuals at Fox who, what no one knew was Verizon was starting to build the foundation of VCast. And they were working to syndicate shows like The Simpsons, clips of it, to that platform. And so Lucy Hood, Mitch Feynman, and myself, we said, well, wait a minute. What if we did original content? What if we sold Verizon something original, not clip, license, but premieres?
Interesting.
What are we going to call that? Direct-to-mobile idea. And the name became the Mobisode, right? Webisode, Mobisode.
Sure.
It's not that genius, but
it's
at
cool.
the time...
Yeah. That's great.
At the time, everybody was like, the Mobisode. And so we did that. We sold the very first two were actually Love and Hate and Franklin Hotel. Those were and it became Sunset Hotel. Those were the first two sold.
Very cool.
And then 24 came out of that, and of course, other Mobisodes. And when that premiered in, I think it was February of 2005, I realized that, wow, we had done something really different, but I also really understood that distribution was about to break apart. That the fact that the walled gardens of the networks, no matter how many there were at that time, and there were, the cable was booming, and we were heading towards that 500-channel universe, but I started to see the 1,000-channel universe, and that if everyone could watch TV on their cell phone, and if anyone could create content with their cell phone, then the entertainment industry as we knew it and know it was going to change dramatically. And so in April of that year, I went to my boss, the president of 20th Television, and I told him, I'm going to go make television for cell phones. I'm leaving.
Interesting.
And he did very much what that first boss I had did, sat back and said, what are you doing? What is that? But I was very clear on what that was. And shortly after that, I was recruited by Bessemer Ventures and Charles River Ventures to go into a company called 1K TV. And they had created a multimedia player that started on Sprint early on, before VCast. And they were doing a product, it was a news product. And they asked me to come in and be the executive vice president and oversee the studio. Because they saw what I saw, which was if you could then create all the content. They had the technology. And when we talked more about mobile, the technology element of it was critical and really special what we had. And the content was there to serve, the purpose for the technology. And we did that for 6 years. We sold that company in 2011 to a company called Funware. And I saw the merger of television and digital and mobile coming together. And so for me, my next vision was I saw it wasn't about mobile only or mobile first. It was about content that could play across all platforms. And so I went to Gil Goldstein of Burnham and Murray, John Murray, and of course, who was running the company. And I told him, this is how I see the world changing, and you should be a part of that. Let's be a part of that. He agreed, and he brought me over to run digital, to start creating the production, the creative, the development process that would be unique to mobile and digital. And we did that for about 3 years. And I was, from doing that, I was fortunate enough to be recruited by a headhunter in regards to the chief content officer of Machinima. And I have to say my timing on all these jumps were, either in my own mind I've created the connection or I had the connection. But what was odd is 6 to 9 months prior to getting that call, actually it was 9 months, because I started in the summer, building financial models for what an MCN and a digital network would look like under Burnham Murray. And I was working with a lot of different partners, and we were looking at a lot of different ideas and channels and how we would structure them. But one of the challenges I had is I never felt like I was in that space at that moment, because I was with a traditional production company. Even though we had moved the ball significantly in digital, I wasn't in the center of it. And so then to get that call and someone to say, well, wait a minute, do you want to be in the center of it? You could run content at one of the, well, maybe at that time outside of Maker, it was the largest digital, production, distribution network, Machinima. And I immediately said, yes, absolutely, I want to go have that conversation. And I got the job, I got hired. And the goal there was to, from a strategic standpoint, to take Machinima from just a pure play network strategy to a cross-platform studio strategy. So to use the brand and the uniqueness of the content and the expertise of the content to be on a lot more platforms. And when I left, which was right before it sold to Warner Brothers, we were gearing up, and Warner, we had a relationship with Warner Brothers, and it was selling to them. Right. We were producing 600 hours of original content for 13 different platforms. Wow. All of which was, funded and built specifically for those platforms, and still building and growing the network where we were getting 4 billion views a month. Wow. So the strategy of taking Machinima as a network brand and expanding it, that's what I went in there to do. And also to learn everything I could about how digital distribution and MCN network models worked. And then I realized what the next phase was of the industry. Where was it going to go next? Because it wasn't going to be just about digital networks. Just like at one point I realized it wasn't just about TV or just about mobile. It isn't just about digital networks, which is what Machinima is. And so the question is, can that translate into other network properties, linear, other types of VOD? What could you do with it? And if you couldn't do it with Machinima, where could you do it? And I started looking at the landscape, and very specifically Vice was the model that I thought really, like they were and maybe are still the leaders in that evolution. Because they went from a digital network to a TV network. And at first I thought, well, why would they do that? If the cable industry is ultimately declining, right? We're seeing 2% sub-declines year over year. Then then why was Vice doing that? But the reason is for what I saw at Machinima, which is if I have a brand, then that brand should exist everywhere possible.
Agreed,
and it should have a programmed experience for anyone. And so then I started thinking, well, what property could go from digital to network or network to digital in a real tangible way, not just show extensions or promotions? Fortunate for me, I get a call. Someone asked me, would you be interested in meeting about the president of the El-Ray? And I said, give me 48 hours, I'll call you back. And when I really looked at that brand, I realized it had a critical principle that none of the other cable or broadcast networks have. And that's that it means something. That El-Ray means to be the king, to be proud of who you are. And any brand, any company brand that has that strong of a meaning and a passionate audience that can translate to an editorial voice, then can work on digital as digital original. And so I sat down with everyone here, explained what I wanted to do with El-Ray. They said, we agree. And I got hired as the president and general manager of El-Ray to take this brand and not only continue to grow it as a basic cable network and what that means to the audience we're serving, but also to expand it across all platforms, to really make it a digital, or to make it a global multi-platform brand. And so that's what we are doing here. That is our mission, is to take El-Ray, make it a global platform brand, and continue to serve the audience that Robert Rodriguez and our founders, our co-founders, envisioned, 4 or 5 years ago. So that seemed to be the long story, not the short story. But there you go. That's how I got here.
No, I think that's great. And it's fascinating to me kind of how people get to where they are. And I think it also puts in perspective how somebody like yourself gets to where they are. It sounds like and correct me if I'm wrong, is, maybe a little bit right place at a right time. But I think more than that, you were well networked. You knew a bunch of people. You were delivering on kind of your ideas. You were there when somebody needed you, even from the beginning. And, you took chances when they kind of came to you, right? And I think a lot of people are scared to do that sometimes. They're like, I'm in a job that I maybe like or don't like or somewhere in the middle, and they get an opportunity and they hem and haw, and then it kind of passes them by, where you seem to have jumped at all these kind of opportunities and just kind of seen where your career has kind of taken you, but you kind of had a vision of where you'd like to get to one day. Is that kind of a fair, quick summary?
Yeah, absolutely. And when I speak out at colleges and do different talks, and one of the things that students always ask me is, how did I get these jobs? And the short answer is very much like you said, which is I tend to have a vision first. That vision bakes, and then I start communicating it. I'll meet with everyone. Sure. I'll sit down and tell anyone possible, here's my vision, here's the story, here's where I think it's going. Not because I'm selling them, not because I'm pitching them, but because I'm getting it out there, not only for me to really start fine-tuning and understanding what that vision is, but also because I know other people will talk about that vision. And at some point, somebody else is going to hear it, and I'm sure this is what happened, that someone, a headhunter called someone and said, oh, we're looking for somebody to go into El-Ray. Do you know anyone? And someone goes, I just had lunch with that Tibbets guy, and he told me this wacky idea of what he was going to do next. That sounds like it might be a fit. And then I get that call. I believe that's what's happened for most of my career. And look, the other thing is, I never left any of these jobs wanting to leave. I loved working at Machinima. I loved working with John Murray and Gil Goldshine. GoTV was an amazing experience. It was time to sell. I've had that opportunity where I've really enjoyed my career path and then saw the opportunity. Even back with iMark, working with the people I did back at iMark, I could have stayed there for years. But I saw that opportunity. I saw my vision. I took it. And the best part of all of it is along the way, everyone supported me.
Very cool. No, that's great, man. So I'm curious though, and I know you've kind of talked a bit about this kind of throughout your kind of career history, but like, where do you really kind of see the state of the industry? Because for me, as kind of an outsider a little bit, I think like to your point a few minutes ago, like people don't really care where they consume the content. They just want to consume it on the devices or the platforms that they use every day. And it sounds like you very much share that same kind of thing. And that's what you guys are really trying to do with the El Rey network. And even kind of geographical borders, at least, don't really make sense to me, especially with the internet side of things.
Well, that's right. I mean, look, what do people want? They want to be entertained or they want to be informed, right?
Sure.
Or they want a little bit of both.
Sure.
And when you think of El Rey, we're escapist entertainment. When we have mission behind a lot of what we do, there is a point of view. But at the end of the day, and this comes from our founder and head creative, Robert Rodriguez, it's escapist entertainment. When people are going to sit down and watch something, they're going to do it because they want to get away. Sure. They want to escape. And so, when I think of that, then I think, okay, it doesn't need to be the walls. There may be different types of programming. Maybe my linear network is programmed and I make shows differently than what I might make for Go90, right? Or what I might make for a pure play digital across Facebook or whatever social platform. But at the end of the day, it's the brand that matters. So what I believe from an entertainment standpoint is the ones who win are the ones who have a really identifiable, powerful brand, something people want to wear as a hat, as a shirt.
Sure.
If you go so far as and I love wearing my El Rey hat or my El Rey shirt or my El Rey sweatshirt. I do it all the time, and I do it because everywhere I travel, I'm on a plane, I'm in the airport, I go to a restaurant, someone stops me and goes, "I love that network. Where can I get that hat? Where can I get that shirt?"
That's very cool.
People love the brand so much that they're willing to wear it. And so that's powerful. Vice, I think, has that. People have this sense of passion for Vice. I don't think people have a passion for the brand of, let's say, a TBS or a CBS. They may have a passion for the show. You may have a passion for Walking Dead, but you probably don't have a passion for AMC. And the thing I love about El Rey is I find people have a passion for El Rey and they have a passion for our shows like Lucha Underground. Sure. And so we hit both of those kind of value propositions with a consumer, and that's what makes it valuable, and that's what makes it where we can put it on any platform.
No, I think that's really interesting. So, but how do you guys kind of decide what to kind of air and create then? Is it a lot of research-based stuff? Because to build a brand that somebody wants to buy the T-shirt is pretty rare.
Yes. Well, one, and I'll keep pointing back to, I think Robert Rodriguez, and I did not know Robert prior to this, certainly knew of him, but I find Robert is both. He is truly creatively genius. He is that true multitasker, can do a lot of things and does them really well.
Okay.
And he's a very savvy businessman, very savvy. He is very clear about his brand and the El Rey brand. And when you have that level of clarity, I think one of the things that goes wrong often in entertainment is the lack of clarity of what a product should be. Whether it's a show, whether it's a company, whatever it is, you have to have a single vision. And some of the best product I see out there comes from a single vision. When you get a lot of people with an opinion and it starts to be a compromise and you start to water it down, that never works. And so we have an advantage point because we have a very clear head of creative who has a vision. So that's the starting point, and that's the most important. Then you start looking at your data. Who's watching television? Really, who's watching TV, right? We talk about 18 to 49. Really, the mass audience in television, any of the data that's out there you'll see, is 35 plus, right? So you really want that 35 to 49-year-old in television. When you look at your digital numbers, what are they really? They're really 18 to 34. And depending on your brand, maybe you're an awesomeness, which is really 12 to 24. Maybe we fit more on the digital side, 25 to 34. But the 25-year-old watching content is not the same as the 49 watching content. Not always, right? In a lot of cases, like Lucha Underground, we do get that, where maybe the father and the son watch together, right?
Sure.
But a lot of things we see as far as digital viewership and television viewership, it is a similar individual from a psychographic standpoint, but different in age breakdown, and therefore they're going to have different likes and interests of what they want to see or how they want to see it. And so we think about all that when we start creating and programming of what should be on the network, what should be on a digital platform. Even on the deal, you can see in the press we are producing a couple of shows for Go 90.
Sure.
One is called Explosion Jones, an animated series. The other one, Rebel Without a Crew, where Robert brings together filmmakers to make a film for $7,000 like he did 25 years ago. And Robert also sees if he still has what it takes to make a film for $7,000. 25 years later. And the way that is done for Go 90 versus the way it will be done for El Rey, those are different things. But it is the same show, the same brand, the same tone, style, patina that is very unique to El Rey.
No, that's actually quite fascinating. And I also think it helps that the network was created, 2013, correct?
Yes.
So, getting a company that's been around for decades to kind of think how you guys kind of thought from probably even before you shot anything, right? And maybe even before you guys finalized on a name, but to have kind of here's kind of the brand we want to create, here's the type of style and content that we want to put out, and we want to think about all these mediums, I think actually is really good advice with somebody that's kind of looking to maybe get into any industry, really, is that I think in some cases they might be I'm not a big CBS, for example, but I think in some ways, and it sounds like you guys very much kind of use that as a strength instead of kind of a weakness to say, we can consider doing almost whatever, and we can, support all these different mediums. Where I've worked at big companies before where sometimes getting them to pivot into a new space or move into a new space can take years, or it's just not going to happen for a handful of reasons, good or bad. Is that fair to say?
Well, absolutely. It was one of the driving factors why, again, El Rey was the right brand. So you start with, it already has that uniqueness, right, of a brand that
Sure.
The people who know it are passionate about, and opportunity to expand it to more people. But it had two other things. It had that independent nature because it is Robert's channel.
Right.
But it also has a partner in Univision. So it has the strength of the big company, but it operates as its own entity.
Interesting.
And that entrepreneurship is really what's unique about this. And when you look at, I've read a lot of different books on companies and success and how they became successful. And, there's so many case studies out there of big companies trying to create something innovative and fail. Unless they have the CEO truly 100% behind it, it becomes the priority.
Sure.
Because if it's not the priority, then everything that has made that business what it is and keeps the lights on, that is the priority. And so anytime you can take an entity and put it somewhere else and let it grow independently, that's where success comes from. And so this is almost an example of that. Even though, again, it is a Robert-owned entity, having that partnership gives us a leg up that as just an independent we wouldn't have.
No, that makes a lot of sense. But we're coming to kind of the end of the show, and I really want to talk about kind of your involvement with the Media Excellence Awards. You've kind of been there since kind of the beginning. So do you maybe want to kind of talk about why you've been involved for so long and how you continue to still be involved?
Absolutely, yeah. So back in 2005, when 1KTV, V-Star / then became GoTV, that was the company name. It was a really frustrating time in the sense that I was running around explaining to people. People would say, "Well, what are you doing now?" And I would say, "I'm making TV for cell phones, and I'm making applications." And nobody knew what an application was, right? Sure. People all talk about apps and applications today. But go back to 2005, 2006, Nobody knew what an application was. Certainly nobody knew what a video player application and a video mobile portal was. And so we were trying to explain to the entertainment community what mobile is. And at that time, Sarah Miller was actually a part of, she was running her PR agency, and she was our PR agency of record. And there was this thing called Mobile Mondays. And Mobile Mondays were, a small group of us, there weren't many, who would come together. I think it was once a quarter, and we would talk about what's going on in the industry, have a little panel discussion, what's happening. And Sarah thought, wait a minute, look at what all these companies are doing. And no one's talking about it. No one's featuring it. I even go back to some of the things we were doing. In 2007, we started delivering dynamic pre-roll video ads on all mobile devices in the U.S. and most of the world. Wow. Nobody knew we were doing that. Nobody. YouTube wasn't delivering pre-roll dynamic mobile videos or ads on their phone until on their platform until like 2015.
Sure. Yeah.
We were doing it in 2007 and selling it at a $40 CPM. Nobody knew it. We had an application on Facebook, all 100% mobile in Facebook, called Live From You, which basically had all the functionality of like an Instagram. Nobody knew it because nobody had the capability. Because, again, it was like 2007, 2008. This is pre-smartphone. So you had 4% of the U.S. population even utilizing any type of application on their phone at that time, and it was mainly games.
Yeah.
So the market was so small from a consumer standpoint, we needed a way to start recognizing the technology and, the truly innovative technology advances that were going on at the time, and the content advantage, things we were doing, because it was innovative. People in 2012 were talking about how to produce for mobile. Well, we were doing it in 2005. We were talking about frames per second and how to shoot and how it should be framed and how you should tell those stories, because we had all the data for it. And so when Sarah really saw that as an opportunity to add that benefit to all of us, little startup companies, she created the mobile. It was really the Mobile Excellence Awards, because, again, at that time, we were just really talking about mobile and mobile first. And so I was there at the very beginning, 10 years ago, very first award. We won, actually, one of the first awards. That's for awesome. Some of the stuff we did. And then because of all the technical and content innovations we made, I ended up being the mobile ambassador for the Mobile Excellence Awards, which was nice. And, got to talk on panels and go to different events to really try to educate what was happening in the mobile space. And by 2007, but really 2008, 2009, smartphone penetration really started to hit the market. People then started realizing all the firepower that was available on your mobile device and all the different applications that you could utilize. And it became much more of an application environment, certainly with the App Store, than a pure play mobile video or mobile first destination. And so that's been the evolution of working with Sarah and now the Media Excellence Awards, because when you think about it, it's very much what we've talked about on this call. It's mobile critical, got to have mobile.
Sure.
But media and how you approach media or how you approach content or a content experience, whatever that is, that really is the new form of innovation that we're seeing.
No, I 100% agree with you. I think that's really cool. I always like to know kind of how stuff kind of evolved and how you guys were kind of at the beginning of that stuff is really cool. And, I'm looking forward to actually, I'm going to be at the Media Awards, in a couple weeks now. And so we'll get to meet in person, and I'm excited to have that. And so we're pretty much at the end of the show. So let's maybe close with where people can get more information about yourself, the network, and the Media Excellence Awards.
Yeah. So, well, first off, on the LRAY, it's just lraynetwork.com, and that's to see what programming we have, schedule, find where LRAY is in your local community. So please subscribe. And then the Mobile Excellence Awards. I think you have the URL for that, right? Or the Media Excellence Awards. Is it Media X?
Yeah, like
Awards?
the letter X
I don't have
and
it in
then
front of me.
awards.com. Yeah.
Yep. .com.
Perfect. Well, Daniel, I really appreciate you taking the time out of your day to be on the show, and I look forward to keeping in touch with you and seeing you in person in a couple of weeks.
Yeah, I look forward to meeting you in person. And again, thank you so much for having me on the program.
All right, man. Well, thanks again, and we'll talk soon.
All right, take care.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening. Please visit the show's website at buildingthefutureshow.com. Also check us out on Facebook at Building the Future Show and follow us on Twitter at Building Show. The music for the show is done by Electric Mantra. You can check him out at electricmantra.com and keep building the future.